In this video, I'd like to talk about some of the specific things you're going to want to make sure to be familiar with in order to effectively make the most out of working with the modifier stack. Techniques like applying modifiers, removing them, and renaming them if and when needed. Let's begin by first looking at how you apply a modifier to an object. So we have something to work with. Let's drop a cylinder into the middle of our top view. Now the size won't be important, just get it on the screen. Now we can take the perspective view full screen by activating that viewport, then hitting the Alt-W keyboard combo. Let's now type in some specific values for our object just to make sure that we all look the same. Over in the command panel on the right, open up the Modify column. In the Parameters section, let's now type in these values. We'll give the cylinder a radius of 5 and a height of 50. You can use either the down arrow or the Tab key to move from one field to another. Let's also change the number of sides to 25. And because of the way that we'll be changing the look of our cylinder, let's increase the number of height segments to 20. Okay, now once you've done that, go ahead and right-click on the screen. If you need to do so a couple times to close the menu, go ahead and do it. Now we can hit Z to get things centered. And if we need to zoom back just a ways, we can use the Zoom command in the viewport navigation controls either in the lower right-hand corner of the interface or by simply rolling the mouse wheel back to us. Okay, in order to apply a modifier, that object must first be selected. Now we've already done that, so we can go ahead and move over back into the Modify column on the right. Modifiers are accessed by clicking on the black arrow to the right of the name Modifier list. The names in the list are listed by category and are in alphabetical order. Now there's a couple ways that you can navigate through the list. Put your mouse on top of any of the names, and then on the keyboard use the up and down arrows. You can also choose to instead use the scroll bar over on the right-hand side. A third method would be to type the first letter of the modifier that you're looking for. Now, I'm going to be looking for the taper, so I'll go ahead and type T. When you find the name in the list, either click on the name or hit Enter on your keyboard to load it onto the cylinder. Over in the modifier stack, notice how the taper has been stacked on top of the cylinder entry. That's how the stack works. Whatever you add to the stack will be placed on top of wherever you are in the stack. Max then starts at the bottom of the list and calculates its way to the top. You got that? So items further to the bottom of the list are worked into the calculations. Here how the cylinder will change before any entries that are farther to the top of the list are seen and calculated in. That's a real important issue, one that we'll be looking at in detail in another video. Now, check out the settings you see below the stack. These are the controls for the taper. So you can change, for an example, the taper amount or the curvature. Let's do this. We'll give the taper amount a value of -0.9, and we'll change the curvature to 3.5. Again, you can use either the down arrow on your keyboard or the Tab key to move from one field to the other. That orange cage you see on the cylinder is the control for the taper. It's referred to as a gizmo, and it basically displays how the taper effect is changing the look of the object. Now, not all modifiers are going to have a gizmo, but quite a few of them do. Now, drop down the stack to the cylinder. In the Parameters section, you now see the settings that control the look of the original cylinder shape. So you could, for an example, change the height or the radius. I'll keep them both at the settings we originally entered by simply right-clicking on the spinner before committing. Now, if you ever want to turn off a modifier, in other words, disabling its effect, you can do so by clicking on the light bulb to the left of that modifier's name in the list. To turn it back on, you can simply click on it again or right-click and choose the On command. Back in the stack, let's click on the name taper, then add another modifier and see where it's placed in the list. This time around, I'm looking for the bend, located in the modifier list, and click on its name. Now check out how it's been added above the taper. Remember, that's the way that Max works. Things are stacked on top of whatever else is in the stack, or on top of wherever you are in the stack with whatever entry you have selected. Now remember, Max calculates its way through the stack going from the bottom to the top, which means that Max will first interpret the taper settings before applying whatever we might do to the bend. Back in the viewport, notice the bend 2 has its own orange gizmo. Let's now experiment with changing the angle of the bend. Let's then finalize on these numbers. We'll take the bend angle to 75, then we can adjust the direction. I'm going to leave the direction right around -110. Now, if you drop back down the stack to the taper, the reason we're still seeing the effect of the taper, even though with where we are in the stack, Max is yet to calculate it in, is because of an icon that's on below the stack. It's sitting a little bit off to the left-hand side and it's named Show End Result. Watch what happens if you turn that off. With it in an off position, we're no longer seeing, well, the end result. Having backs displaying in the view what things would look like before the bend was applied. Let's return Show End Result to the on position. We can then jump back farther up in the stack, clicking on the bend. Now, if you run into a situation where you no longer want a particular modifier, or maybe you've inadvertently added the wrong one, you can remove a modifier from the stack a couple of different ways. The first would be to put your mouse on the name of the modifier and right-click. In the menu that opens, you choose Delete. Now let's not do that for this one. Instead, to delete the bend modifier, I'll have its name selected in the list and I'll drop again down to the icons below the stack. This time on the right-hand side, you'll see a little icon that kind of looks like Popeye's spinach can. The name is Remove Modifier from the stack. Go ahead and click that. That effectively removed the modifier from the list, having now the cylinder being controlled only by the taper. Let's undo that, in other words, get the bend modifier back by simply using the shortcut Ctrl-Z. Now I'll drop back down the stack to the taper and change the curve value, making things look a little thinner. Modifiers can also easily be renamed. With the entry highlighted in the stack, you'd simply right-click on the name. You choose Rename, then type in whatever you'd like. I'm going to name this All Stretched Out. So that'll give you a handful of important things to remember when working in the stack. Get them down and start putting them to use.